I was about to send him $15,000. I even opened my bank app. Just trust me, he said. Everything felt real. His voice. His stories. But one small detail kept bugging me, his number. And when I finally checked it, the truth was, I didn't close the app right away. I just sat there on my couch, phone in my hand, staring at the transfer screen like it could explain something to me. My thumb hovered over the button, but I couldn't press it. Not yet. Something felt off, and I couldn't ignore it. A few weeks earlier, none of this existed. He didn't exist. It started because I was bored. After work, I'd go home, heat something up, sit in the same spot, scroll through the same apps. Reno gets quiet in a way that creeps up on you. Not loud, not busy, just still. And after a while, that kind of stillness starts to feel heavier than it should. So I downloaded a language exchange app. No expectations. Just something to break the routine. That's where I met him. Nick Cole. The first conversation was normal. Almost forgettable. He asked where I was from. I told him Reno. He said he grew up in the US, but was working overseas now in Singapore, doing project consulting. It sounded broad, but not unrealistic. I didn't question it. What made him stand out wasn't what he said. It was that he kept showing up. Every morning, there'd be a message. Not long. Not dramatic. Just consistent. Morning. Hope your day's easy. Sometimes he'd follow up on something I mentioned the day before. He remembered details. Small ones. That's what pulled me in. After about 2 weeks, we moved off the app. Texting felt easier. More natural. Then eventually calls. The first time he called me, I actually hesitated before answering. Not because I was scared, just aware. Like this was the moment where it either felt real or it didn't. I answered. Hey, he said. His voice matched everything. Calm, steady, a little tired, like someone who had been working too much. There was nothing off about it. No weird pauses, no forced tone. We talked for maybe 20 minutes that first call. Nothing deep. Just normal conversation. But it felt easy in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. After that, it became routine. Messages in the morning. A call at night if our schedules lined up. Sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. It never felt forced. That's what made it believable. I didn't notice when it started to matter to me. But it did. There was one night he didn't message at all. No explanation. No, busy day, nothing. I told myself it didn't matter. But I still checked my phone. More than once. When he finally messaged the next morning, apologizing, saying work had been nonstop, I felt relief I didn't want to admit was there. That should have been the moment I stepped back. Instead, I leaned in. One evening, I was still standing in my kitchen after work when my phone rang. It was him. Rough day? He asked. I let out a small laugh. You always ask that like you already know. I kind of do, he said. You get quiet when you're stressed. I didn't answer right away. Not because I disagreed, but because he was right. No one had said something like that to me in a long time. We talked for almost an hour that night. About work, random stories, nothing important. But it felt comfortable. Natural. Like something I didn't have to think about. At one point, he said, when I get back, I'm taking you out. No more phone calls. Just normal. I remember smiling at that. Standing there alone, phone against my ear, actually picturing it. That was the first time it felt like something more than just talking. Weeks passed like that. Same pattern. Same consistency. Same feeling that this was becoming part of my routine without me noticing. And then things started to shift. Not all at once. That's what makes it harder to see. He mentioned work issues first. Just in passing. A delayed payment from a client. He sounded annoyed, but not worried. I didn't think anything of it. People complain about work all the time. A few days later, he brought it up again. This time, he sounded more stressed. I've got most of my money tied up in this project, he said. And now they're dragging it out. I leaned back against the counter and said, can't you just call your bank or something? I did, he said. It's different when you're overseas. Everything takes longer. It sounded reasonable. It didn't feel like a red flag. At least not yet. A few days passed, and things went back to normal. Conversations, jokes, small routines. If anything, he seemed more attentive after that, like he didn't want the stress to affect us. Then one night, he sounded off again. Not dramatic. Just off. I hate asking this, he said. That sentence made me pause. I didn't respond right away. I might need a favor, he added. I sat down on the edge of my couch, my phone pressed against my ear, suddenly more aware of the conversation than I had been in weeks. What kind of favor? I asked. There was a small pause. Not long enough to feel strange, but long enough that I noticed it. I can send money to you, he said, and you send it back to me once it clears. It's just temporary. My account's flagged right now because of the transfer delay. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I knew something was wrong, but because something didn't feel completely right. Not alarm bells. Just a quiet hesitation. I said, I don't know. That sounds a little complicated. It is, he admitted. And I get it if you're not comfortable. I'll figure something else out. He didn't push. That's what made it harder to question. We ended the call normally after that. No tension. No pressure. But after I hung up, I sat there longer than usual. Thinking. Not about him exactly. But about how quickly things had gone from normal to something that felt like it mattered. And I couldn't tell if that was a good thing or not. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. People ask for help sometimes. It didn't automatically mean anything was wrong. That's what I kept repeating in my head the night after that call. I didn't say yes, but I didn't shut it down either. I left it in that uncomfortable space where it could go either way. The next morning, his message was normal. Morning. Hope you slept okay. Like nothing had happened. I stared at it longer than I should have. Part of me expected him to bring it up again. To push. But he didn't. And somehow, that made me feel worse. I replied like I always did. We talked about work. He asked about a claim I was handling. I told him about a case involving a fake accident report, something obvious once you looked closely, but convincing enough that it almost passed. He said, "You're good at catching things people miss." I remember typing back, "It's literally my job." But I sat there after sending it, rereading my own message. Because if that was true, then why didn't this feel obvious? That thought didn't stay long. I pushed it aside. It felt easier to just keep going. That evening, I met Grace after work. We had this routine. Same small cafe, same table near the window. Sam, the barista, already knew what we ordered before we even said anything. "You look tired," Grace said the second I sat down. "I'm fine," I said, maybe too quickly. She raised an eyebrow. That didn't sound convincing. I laughed it off, but she kept looking at me like she knew something was off. I didn't tell her right away. I don't know why. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. Or maybe because part of me already knew how it would sound. Instead, I said, "I've just been talking to someone." Her expression changed instantly. "Oh? Like, someone?" I nodded. She smiled. "Okay. Details." So I told her. Not everything. Just the safe version. How we met, how consistent he was, how easy it felt. "And he's overseas?" she asked. "Yeah, Singapore." She nodded slowly. "That's kind of cool." "Yeah," I said, but my voice didn't match the word. She noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked. I hesitated. Then I said it. "He asked me for help with money." She didn't interrupt. She just leaned back slightly, waiting. "He said it's temporary," I added. "Something about his account being flagged. He'd send it to me first, then I send it back once it clears." Grace didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she asked how much. "He didn't say yet," I said. That was technically true. She let out a small breath. "That's a little weird." "Yeah," I said quietly. "You don't know him," she added. Not harsh. Just direct. "I know," I said. "And you've never met him in person." "I know." She tilted her head. "Then why are you even considering it?" I didn't have a good answer. So I said the closest thing to the truth. "Because it doesn't feel like that." She frowned slightly. "Like what?" "Like he's a stranger." That sounded worse out loud than it did in my head. Grace didn't push me. She just said, "Just be careful." "Okay. I will," I said. And I meant it. At least, I thought I did. That night, Nick called me again. His tone was lighter, like the stress from before had faded. We talked about normal things. Work, random stories, nothing serious. It almost felt like the conversation about money hadn't even happened. Then, right before we ended the call, he said, "Hey, about what I mentioned the other night." My chest tightened slightly. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," he said. "I meant that." "I know," I said. "I just didn't want you to think I was trying to put you in a weird position." "You didn't," I said quickly. And I realized, in that moment, I was trying to make him feel better. Not the other way around. He said, "I'll figure something out. It's just frustrating." I hesitated. Then I said, "How much are you dealing with?" There was a pause. Longer this time. "Not a small amount," he said. "But I wouldn't ask you for anything crazy." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay," I said. After we hung up, I sat there again, phone still in my hand. The conversation replayed in my head, but not the way it should have. I wasn't focusing on the risk. I was focusing on how he sounded. Stressed. Careful. Like he didn't want to lose my trust. And somehow, that made me trust him more. Over the next few days, things shifted in a way that was harder to notice. He started sharing more. Not just surface-level things, but stories. Personal ones. About growing up, about work pressure, about being alone in a different country. It felt like he was letting me in. And every time he did that, I felt more connected. More invested. At the same time, he never pushed the money topic again. Not directly. But it stayed there. Under everything. Like something waiting. I started thinking about it more than I wanted to admit. Running through scenarios in my head. If he sends the money first, maybe it's safe. If it's temporary, maybe it's not a big deal. If I say no, what does that say about me? That last one bothered me the most. Because it didn't feel like I was protecting myself. It felt like I was failing him. And I hated that I even thought about it that way. One night, I opened my banking app. Not to send anything. Just to look. To see what I actually had saved. The number sat there on the screen. Quiet. Stable. Something I hadn't touched in a long time. Emergency money. The kind you don't use unless something serious happens. I stared at it longer than I should have. And for the first time, the thought didn't feel completely impossible. It felt like an option. That's when I realized something had already changed. I wasn't just talking to him anymore. I was starting to make decisions around him. And that should have scared me more than it did. By the next week, it didn't feel like a question anymore. It felt like something that was going to happen. Not because he forced it. Not because he kept asking. But because the idea had been sitting in my head long enough that it stopped feeling extreme. That's how it shifted. Slowly. Quietly. He didn't bring it up right away. In fact, he did the opposite. He kept everything normal. Morning texts. Night calls. Small details. Jokes. The same rhythm we had built. If anything, he was more careful now. And that made it worse. Because it felt like he was protecting me from it, even though I was already thinking about it on my own. One night, we were on the phone longer than usual. I was sitting on my couch, lights off, just the glow from my phone lighting the room. You ever think about leaving Reno? He asked. The question caught me off guard. Not really, I said. Why? I don't know, he said. Feels like you've been stuck there too long. I let out a small laugh. You've never even been here. I don't need to, he said. You talk about it like you're just existing. I didn't answer that. Because he wasn't wrong. After a few seconds, he added, when I get back, we should go somewhere. Not Reno. Somewhere different. That's a big assumption, I said lightly. What is? That I'd go anywhere with you. He laughed. You would. The confidence in his voice didn't sound arrogant. It sounded certain. And that did something to me. The next day, everything changed. Not in tone. In direction. He texted me earlier than usual. Hey, I might actually have a solution. I stared at the message before opening it. What kind of solution? I typed back. There's a way to move part of the money, he said. Not all of it. Just enough to clear the restriction. I felt my chest tighten slightly. How? I asked. I can route it through you, he said. It's simpler that way. Less delay. There it was again. But this time, it didn't feel like a vague idea. It felt specific. I didn't respond right away. He sent another message. But listen, I don't want you to feel pressured. If you're not comfortable, just say no. I'll figure something else out. That line again. No pressure. Always giving me the option to walk away. And somehow, that made it harder to say no. What would I have to do? I asked. There was a short pause before he replied. I'd send you funds first, he said. Then you send back what I need once it clears. It's just timing. It sounded simple. Too simple. And if something goes wrong? I asked. It won't, he said quickly. Then, softer, I wouldn't put you in that position. I read that message more than once. Because it didn't sound like a scam. It sounded like reassurance. Later that afternoon, I was at work, staring at my screen but not really seeing anything. Kevin walked past my desk and stopped. You good? He asked. Yeah, I said, a little too fast. He looked at me for a second. You've been staring at the same file for 10 minutes. I glanced at my screen. He was right. Just tired, I said. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe it. Take a break, he said. You're not going to catch anything if you're not focused. That line hit me harder than it should have. You're not going to catch anything. That's what I did for a living. I found inconsistencies. Patterns. Things that didn't line up. And yet, here I was, trying to convince myself everything lined up perfectly. That night, I called Grace. I didn't plan to. It just happened. Hey, she answered. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. I hesitated. Then I said, if someone sends you money first, does that make it safe? She didn't answer right away. What kind of situation is this? She asked. I exhaled slowly. The same one I told you about. Sarah, she started, then stopped herself. Nora. I closed my eyes. Don't do that, she said. Do what? Convince yourself it's okay just because it sounds structured. I'm not. You are, she cut in gently. You're trying to make it make sense. I didn't respond. She continued, you don't know him. Not really. It doesn't feel like that, I said again, quieter this time. That doesn't change reality, she said. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything she had said. I'm just thinking about it, I added. Then stop thinking about it like it's your responsibility, she said. It's not. After we hung up, I sat there in my apartment, everything quiet again. But now my thoughts were louder. Because she was right. And I knew she was right. But knowing something and acting on it aren't the same thing. The next morning, Nick sent me screenshots. Bank statements. Emails. Everything looked official. Clean. Real. I don't want you to feel unsure, he said. I can show you everything. I zoomed in on the images. Logos. Numbers. Transaction histories. Nothing stood out as fake. Nothing obvious. This is what I'm dealing with, he added. And that's when the number showed up. $15,000. I stared at it. It didn't feel real at first. Not because it was too big, but because it suddenly made everything feel serious. Not hypothetical anymore. Real. I typed, "That's a lot." "I know," he said. I wouldn't ask if I had another option. There it was again. Not pressure. Just positioning. I put my phone down and leaned back. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. Because now, it wasn't just about helping him. It was about deciding whether I believed him. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself yet. I wanted to. I didn't say yes right away. That's what I keep telling myself. Like that somehow makes it better. But the truth is, I didn't say no either. And that space in between is where everything got dangerous. After he sent the screenshots, we didn't talk for a couple hours. Not because anything was wrong, but because I needed time to sit with it. Or at least that's what I told myself. I opened my banking app again. Same number. Same savings. Nothing had changed. Except now, I was looking at it differently. Before, it was security. Something stable. Untouchable. Now, it felt like a decision. I locked my phone and set it down. Picked it up again 5 minutes later. Opened the app again. Closed it. Opened it again. I was trying to convince myself I was thinking this through. But really, I was just circling the same thought. If he sends the money first, then it's safe. That idea kept repeating. Like it solved everything. That night he called. His voice was softer than usual. "Hey," he said. "Hey." There was a pause. Not awkward. Just careful. "I don't want to make this weird," he said. "You're not," I replied. "I mean it," he added. "If you're not comfortable, just tell me. I'll drop it." There it was again. No pressure. Always giving me the exit. And somehow, that made me step closer instead of walking away. "I'm just trying to understand how it works," I said. "It's simple," he replied. "I transfer part of the funds to you. Once it clears, you send back what I need. That's it. No risk to you." "No risk," I repeated quietly. "None," he said. "I wouldn't ask you otherwise." I stared at the wall while he spoke, letting his words settle in. "Okay," I said slowly. "And how long does it take?" "A day, maybe 2, he answered. "Not long." Everything about it sounded controlled. Planned. Like he had already thought through every step. "What if something gets flagged on my side?" I asked. "It won't," he said, a little quicker this time. Then softer again, "It's just a transfer. Nothing unusual." I didn't respond right away. Because something in that answer felt slightly off. Not wrong. Just too certain. He noticed the pause. "I can send a smaller amount first," he added. "Just so you feel comfortable." That was new. And it worked. Because now it didn't feel like one big decision. It felt like something gradual. "Test it. See how it goes." "That might be better," I said. "Okay," he replied. "We'll do it that way." We ended the call normally. But after I hung up, I didn't feel normal. I felt committed. Not fully, but enough. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. Numbers blurred together. Reports didn't make sense. I kept rereading the same lines without processing anything. Kevin walked by again and stopped. "You're doing it again," he said. "Doing what?" Staring at nothing. I forced a small smile. "Just tired." He leaned slightly on my desk. "Then go home early." "I'm fine." He looked at me for a second longer than usual. "You sure?" I nodded. He didn't push. But as he walked away, he said, "Don't overthink something that doesn't feel right." I froze. I don't know if he meant it like that. But it landed exactly where it shouldn't have. That evening, I didn't go straight home. I went to the cafe. Same table. Same routine. Sam set my drink down in front of me without asking. "You look like you're thinking too hard," he said casually. I gave a small laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "Only if you've been coming here as long as you have," he replied. I nodded, but I didn't say anything else. Because I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to hear it out loud again. Instead, I sat there, staring at my phone. At our messages. Scrolling back through everything. Looking for something. A mistake. A sign. Anything that would make the decision easier. But everything looked normal. Every message felt consistent. Every conversation made sense. And that's what made it harder. Because there was nothing obvious to point to and say, "This is wrong." Later that night, he texted me. "I can send the first transfer tomorrow," he said. My heart started beating faster immediately. "Okay," I replied. Just one word. But it meant more than I wanted to admit. He sent a follow-up. "Thank you. Seriously. You don't know how much this helps." I stared at that message. And instead of feeling worried, I felt needed. That was the moment something shifted completely. Because now it wasn't just about trust. It was about responsibility. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had to, but because I knew what was supposed to happen. I checked my phone. No message yet. I got ready for work slower than usual, my mind somewhere else entirely. Halfway through the morning, my phone buzzed. "It's sent," he wrote. My chest tightened. I didn't check my account immediately. I waited. For what, I don't know. Maybe for the feeling to change. But it didn't. Eventually, I opened my banking app. My fingers felt heavier than they should have. The screen loaded. And, for a second, nothing looked different. Then I refreshed it. And there it was. A deposit. I stared at it. Because this was the moment that mattered. Not the request. Not the conversations. This. Proof. Something real. Something that made everything feel legitimate. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My heart was racing now. Not from fear. From relief. Because now, it looked like he was telling the truth. And that meant I could go through with it. That afternoon, I opened the transfer page. Typed in the amount. $15,000. My thumb hovered over the button. Everything felt quiet. Too quiet. And that's when something small, something completely unrelated, pushed its way into my head. His number. It had always been the same. Same area code. Same everything. And suddenly, for the first time, it didn't make sense. I didn't press send. My thumb was still hovering over the screen, but that thought wouldn't go away. His number. It had always been the same. Same California area code. Same contact saved in my phone since the first week we started texting. And suddenly, it didn't match anything else he had told me. He'd been in Singapore for months. Different time zone. Different schedule. Different life. But the number never changed. I stared at it like it had just appeared out of nowhere. How did I not notice that before? My chest tightened. Not panic. Just awareness. I slowly lowered my phone and locked the screen. Then I unlocked it again. Opened his contact. Stared at the number. Read it again. Like it was going to explain itself. It didn't. I switched back to our messages. Scrolled through weeks of conversations. Everything still felt real. That was the problem. Nothing about him felt fake. Except now, this one thing didn't fit. I typed a message. "Hey, random question." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Yeah." I hesitated for a second. Then sent it. "Why is your number still US-based if you've been overseas this whole time?" There was a pause. Not long. But long enough that I noticed. My eyes stayed locked on the screen. Waiting. His reply came through. "I use a roaming plan. It's easier than switching numbers all the time." I read it once. Then again. It sounded reasonable. It should have been enough. But something about it felt off. Not wrong. Just rehearsed. Like the answer came too easily. I stared at the message longer than I needed to. Then I typed back. "Oh, okay. That makes sense." I set my phone down. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. Because now I was paying attention. Really paying attention. And once you start doing that, it's hard to stop. I picked my phone back up. Opened his profile picture. It was the same one I had seen dozens of times. Clear. Normal. Nothing unusual. But this time I looked at it differently. Not as him. As something that could be checked. I don't even know why I did it then. Maybe because I needed to prove to myself that everything was fine. That I was overthinking. I took a screenshot. Opened a browser. And ran a reverse image search. I expected nothing. That's the truth. I thought it would come back empty. Just his photo. Just him. Instead, results started loading. And everything inside me dropped. Same face. Different name. Different profile. A man in Dallas, Texas. Ryan Bell. I stopped breathing for a second. My hand tightened around my phone. I clicked on the image. Scrolled. More photos. Same person. Different life. Nothing connected to me. Nothing connected to Nick. My stomach twisted. That heavy, sinking feeling hit all at once. Not confusion. Not doubt. Certainty. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, phone still in my hand. Everything we had talked about. Every conversation. Every detail. All of it started replaying. But now it sounded different. Not real. Constructed. I didn't confront him right away. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed a second to process it. Maybe because I wanted to be sure. Or maybe because part of me wasn't ready to let it go yet. Instead, I kept talking to him. Like nothing had changed. He texted a few minutes later. "You see the transfer?" I looked at the message. Then at the bank app, still open in the background. "Yeah," I replied. "I saw it." "How do you feel?" he asked. That question hit harder than anything else. Because he wasn't asking about the money. He was asking about me. And for a second, I almost answered honestly. Instead, I said, "It looks fine." "Good," he replied. "We can move forward whenever you're ready." Whenever you're ready. That line echoed in my head. Because now I knew something he didn't. And I needed to see how far this went. So I asked questions. Small ones. Details he had mentioned before. Things about his work. His timeline. his location. At first, his answers lined up. Close enough. But not exactly. Dates shifted slightly. Details changed just enough to notice. Not enough for someone who wasn't paying attention. But I was. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's when I knew for sure. There was no confusion anymore. No, maybe. Just truth. I stared at our conversation for a long time before typing. Is your name really Nick? The message sent. And I felt my heart start pounding again. This time, not from doubt. From anticipation. The typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, he replied. Why would you ask that? I let out a slow breath. Because that wasn't denial. That was deflection. I looked up your photo, I typed. That's not you. This time, the pause was longer. Long enough that it felt different. Heavy. When his reply came through, everything changed. Not the words. The tone. You were going to help me anyway. I stared at the screen, reading it over and over. Because that wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an excuse. It was a statement. Cold. Flat. Certain. Like everything that had happened between us didn't matter. Like I had already made the decision in his mind. And that was it. That was the moment everything broke. Not when I found the photo. Not when I questioned him. But right there. Because whatever version of him I thought I knew was gone. Or maybe it was never there at all. I didn't reply to him after that. I just sat there, staring at the message. You were going to help me anyway. It kept replaying in my head. Not loud. Just constant. Like something I couldn't shut off. For a second, I thought about typing something back. Asking more questions. Pushing him. Trying to get something out of him that made sense. But there was nothing to ask. He had already said everything. So I blocked him. Right there. Phone. Messages. Everything. No warning. No last message. Nothing. Just gone. I expected to feel relief immediately. Like cutting something off clean. But that's not what happened. I just felt quiet. Too quiet. I set my phone down and leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. My apartment felt different. Same place. Same silence. But heavier. Because now, everything I had been filling that space with was gone. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Maybe longer. Eventually, I picked my phone back up. Opened my banking app again. The deposit was still there. Real. That part hadn't changed. But now it didn't feel like proof anymore. It felt like a trap. I contacted the bank the next morning. Kept it simple. Told them I received a suspicious transfer and needed it reviewed. They froze the transaction immediately. Asked questions. Took notes. It was all very procedural. Very normal. Which made it feel even stranger. Because nothing about the last few weeks felt normal anymore. At work, I didn't tell anyone. I sat at my desk, going through claims like I always did. Looking for inconsistencies. Checking details. Flagging things that didn't make sense. And the whole time, there was this constant thought sitting in the back of my mind. You almost missed it. That part stayed with me. Not because I sent the money. I didn't. But because I got close enough that the difference didn't feel as big as it should have. Later that week, I told Grace. We were back at the same cafe. Same table. Same routine. Sam dropped off our drinks like nothing had changed. But everything had. I didn't send it, I said. That was the first thing out of my mouth. She let out a breath. Okay, good. But I almost did. She looked at me, really looked this time. How close, she asked. I held up my hand slightly, like I could show the distance. Right there, I said. Her expression shifted. Not judgment. Just understanding. What stopped you, she asked. I hesitated. Then I said, his number. She blinked. His number? Yeah, I said. It didn't match where he said he was. She sat back a little, processing that. Something small, she said. Yeah. We were quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, that's how it usually works. I nodded. I kept thinking I was being careful, I added. Like I was analyzing everything. You were, she said. I looked at her. Just not the right things. That hit harder than I expected. Because she wasn't wrong. I focused on the big picture. The story. The consistency. The way he made me feel. And I ignored the small detail that didn't fit. The one thing that actually mattered. That night, I went home and didn't check my phone. Not once. No messages to wait for. No calls. Just silence again. But this time, it felt different. Not empty. Just honest. A few days later, the bank confirmed what I already knew. The transfer was flagged as fraudulent. It would be reversed. No loss. Clean ending. At least on paper. But it didn't feel clean. Because the money was never the worst part. It was how easily I had let someone in. How quickly something routine turned into something that felt real. And how hard it was to see the difference until it was almost too late. I still think about that moment. Sitting on my couch. Bank app open. Finger hovering over the button. If I hadn't stopped. If I hadn't questioned that one detail. I would have sent it. No hesitation. That's the part one can't ignore. Not because it makes me feel stupid, but because it feels honest. I wanted to believe him. And for a while, that mattered more than anything that didn't make sense. It's been a few months now. I haven't talked to anyone new. Not seriously. I still open that app sometimes. Scroll. Close it again. I don't know if I'm being careful now, or just avoiding the risk completely. Maybe there's a difference. Maybe there isn't. I told myself I learned something from all of this, but I'm not even sure what that is. Because the signs were there. Just small enough to ignore. And I did. So I keep coming back to the same question. At what point does something like this stop being manipulation and start being your fault for not seeing it sooner?